After the guns of World War II fell silent, a new kind of conflict began, one that would define the second half of the 20th century and determine which system of power would dominate the world. This struggle, later known as the Cold War, was never truly about who could build the largest army, the fastest, or deploy the most weapons in a single moment, but about who could endure pressure over decades without collapsing under its own weight. From the very beginning, the United States entered this contest with advantages that went far beyond military hardware. While much of Europe and Asia lay in ruins, the American homeland was untouched by destruction. Its cities stood intact, its factories expanded rather than burned, and its population returned from war with experience, confidence, and a rapidly growing economy. The United States emerged producing more than half of the world's industrial output, controlling the dominant global currency, and shaping the financial institutions that governed international trade and reconstruction. This meant that American power was not limited to force, but embedded in the global system itself. The Soviet Union, despite emerging as a victorious nation, paid an unimaginable price for that victory. Tens of millions of lives were lost, entire regions were devastated, infrastructure was shattered, and the economy was already exhausted before the Cold War had fully begun. To compete with the United States, the Soviet leadership made a critical decision that would ultimately seal its fate. It chose to match American military power without possessing the economic structure capable of sustaining that effort long-term. The American system functioned differently. Defense spending did not exist in isolation from civilian life. It became deeply integrated with universities, private companies, and technological research. Military contracts funded innovation, and innovation fueled productivity across the entire economy. Advances in aviation, electronics, computing, materials science, and communications flowed outward from defense projects into civilian markets, strengthening American industry and raising living standards at the same time. Every investment served multiple purposes, reinforcing national security while expanding economic capacity. The Soviet system lacked this flexibility. Its centralized command economy rewarded obedience rather than efficiency and punished initiative rather than encouraging it. Factories met production quotas regardless of quality. Innovation stagnated under bureaucratic control, and resources were allocated based on political priorities rather than practical outcomes. Military spending consumed a massive portion of national output, but instead of generating growth, it starved other sectors of resources. Consumer goods remained scarce, agriculture lagged behind modern standards, and infrastructure deteriorated even as military parades projected an image of strength.
As the Cold War intensified, the United States expanded its power through alliances rather than domination. NATO and other partnerships distributed the costs of defense while multiplying strategic reach. Allies contributed bases, manpower, intelligence, and industrial capacity, allowing the United States to project power globally without bearing the full burden alone. At the same time, these alliances opened markets for American technology, equipment, and goods, reinforcing economic leadership. The Soviet Union ruled its sphere through coercion rather than cooperation, forcing weaker states into compliance and then subsidizing them to prevent collapse. Instead of gaining strength from its allies, Moscow was drained by them, funneling resources into maintaining control over an empire that produced little in return. This imbalance got even worse over time. The United States could afford to adapt its strategy, reduce forces in one region, expand them in another, invest in long-term research, and absorb temporary setbacks without threatening the stability of the system. The Soviet Union could not. Each escalation demanded deeper sacrifices from an already strained population. When the arms race accelerated into advanced technologies requiring precision manufacturing, complex supply chains, and high levels of computing power, the disparity became overwhelming. The American economy was built to thrive on complexity, competition, and innovation. The Soviet economy was built for volume, rigidity, and control. American companies competed to deliver better aircraft, more reliable electronics, and more efficient systems, while Soviet factories produced equipment that often looked impressive on paper but suffered from maintenance problems, limited lifespan, and poor integration. Over decades, these differences accumulated into a decisive gap. While Americans experienced rising incomes, expanding consumer choice, and rapid technological change, Soviet citizens endured stagnation, shortages, and a future defined by sacrifice without reward. Even moments of apparent Soviet success, such as early achievements in space, failed to change the underlying reality. The United States transformed breakthroughs into entire industries, while the Soviet Union struggled to convert symbolic victories into sustained economic momentum. As the Cold War entered its later stages, American strategy increasingly relied on patience rather than confrontation. Time itself became a weapon. The United States understood that its system could sustain competition indefinitely, while its rival could not. When American investments surged into advanced defense technologies that demanded high levels of innovation and efficiency, the Soviet leadership faced an impossible dilemma. Keeping pace required resources the economy could no longer provide, but falling behind meant losing strategic credibility. Attempts at reform came too late and threatened the very structure holding the system together. The end of the Cold War did not arrive with a final battle or dramatic surrender. It arrived quietly, through economic exhaustion, institutional collapse, and the recognition that the Soviet state could no longer function as a superpower. The United States emerged not merely as the last power standing, but as proof that economic strength, when paired with strategic patience and innovation, is more decisive than raw force. The Cold War revealed a fundamental truth about power. Wars are not ultimately won by how much a nation can force its people to endure, but by how effectively it can convert resources, creativity, and freedom into lasting strength. In that contest, the United States did not just outspend the Soviet Union. It outlasted it, outperformed it, and outgrew it, demonstrating that superiority rooted in adaptability and economic vitality is the most enduring form of power the modern world has ever seen. As the Cold War stretched across decades, one question remained at the center of global tension. Why did two superpowers armed to the teeth never fight each other directly on the battlefield? The answer lies in a dangerous balance unlike anything the world had seen before. A balance built on fear, calculation, and the unprecedented destructive power of modern weapons. After World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union both emerged with massive industrial capacity, global influence, and, soon, nuclear arsenals capable of annihilating entire cities in minutes. This reality created what strategists called mutually assured destruction, the understanding that a direct military confrontation would not produce a victor, only mutual ruin. American leadership understood that strength did not only mean the ability to strike, but also the discipline to avoid a war that could end civilization itself, choosing instead to project power through alliances, economic dominance, technological superiority, and military presence without crossing the final line. The Cold War became a contest of endurance, ideology, and systems, fought through proxy wars, intelligence operations, arms races, space exploration, and psychological pressure rather than direct clashes between American and Soviet troops. Every crisis from Berlin to Cuba was shaped by the knowledge that one miscalculation could trigger irreversible catastrophe, and it was precisely this awareness that restrained both sides. In the end, the absence of direct armed conflict was not a sign of weakness, but of a harsh strategic reality. In a nuclear age, victory meant survival, and the true battlefield of the Cold War was not a single front line, but the global struggle to prove which system could outlast the other without destroying the world in the process. If you enjoyed this deep view into history, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this channel tells the stories that shaped the modern world. See you soon.